welcome my other guests who are joining us live right now, and we are here to decode for the students, for parents who are today feeling a little confused and worried after this new strike by the Trump Sarkar, those who were looking forward to study in a university, in a college in United States of America from this year itself. And what does this order really mean for them? What should they be doing? We'll be getting you all the answers. Joining me on the broadcast is Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, Dr. Karan Gupta, Harvard alumni and a career counselor as well. Vibhuti Jha, ex-Republican candidate for New York Assembly. We're also joined by Catherine, senior visiting fellow, CSIS, chair in the US-India Policy Studies and senior diplomat and former US Consul General in Hyderabad. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. Ambassador Sajjanhar, I want to ask you first. You know, so much is happening in Trump 2.0, but what does this strike against foreign students really mean, in your opinion? Specifically, the fact that now the social media past of these students is going to decide their future in the United States of America. There is a freeze on US visa as well for international students.
Yeah, thank you very much, Heena, for having me. Yeah, basically, the avowed objective of the Trump administration is that, universities like Harvard, Columbia, and some of the other Ivy League universities, that they are hosting number of students who are anti-Semitic, their sentiments, their thinking, ideology is anti-Semitic, it's pro-Hamas, etc. And they would like these universities to curtail, getting those students. Now that might be a limited problem, but the manner in which it has evolved is it has become an all-encompassing and all-consuming sort of a problem between the US establishment and these universities. And, I heard briefly your interaction with Professor Tribe and, what his response is. I think the manner in which this is being approached is a lose-lose proposition for all concerned. It is a lose proposition for the US establishment, for the US government, for the US as a country, because US is a country of immigrants. It is, the immigrants have helped the US to grow, getting the foreign talent from other countries to come to the country and, contribute to its economic growth, progress, development. United States gets a lot of revenue, and we have been seeing that because of the huge fiscal deficit, the expenditure is much more than the revenue that it is able to get. It gets huge revenue from the foreign students who are coming. And of course, it is beneficial to the universities also because, you get a mix of international students and you are able to get the best out of them. And of course, it is for international students, whether from India or anywhere else. Yeah, these are great opportunities to be there. So, if they are being shut out from there, it is a huge loss to them also. So I would say it is a lose-lose proposition for all concerned, but not all is lost. I think the Harvard University has got its, arsenal of great lawyers. They will put, their best defense for their own interest in the courts. And I am reasonably hopeful that the courts will decide in favor. There might be some injunctions that they might place, some limitations, restrictions that they might place on what the universities can do or should do. But I think there will not be a blanket ban in terms of taking away all the funding from there. And, reducing the visa
Some interesting points you've raised, and you've said that not all is lost. But I want to, take it forward with Mr. Vibhuti Jha. As Ambassador Sajjanhar was also mentioning, of course, we know for Donald Trump, there is only one goal, make America great again. But will this move not impact America more, as Ambassador Sajjanhar was also explaining to us? Because foreign students, I was looking at some data, foreign students contribute almost $44 billion into the US economy.
You are absolutely right. And I want to say something very clearly that I have been a Republican candidate, but prior to that, I'm an international banker. I worked with Reserve Bank of India and American Express. So I'm here as an immigrant professional, and my son studied in Columbia. So I know a little bit about the academic situation. I also recognize one thing. It's not a win-win situation for anybody. On the contrary, I agree with Ashokji that it is a lose-lose scenario. Definitely. It's not a happy scenario in any which way you can look at it. But then again, there is a famous saying, extraordinary times, extraordinary measures. I mean, we have scenario in which, people are studying here for 17 years. Yesterday itself, there was a message that went around that people are studying in undergrad classes for 17 years. There is an abuse of the system. And I belong to a tribe of those people who believe that if you want to make the system work, you got to occasionally apply the brake as well. Just because we drive on freeways doesn't mean that we have the freedom to drive at any speed you want. There is a speed limit restriction on that. Important part here. The reason is there is an ideological drift between Republicans and Democrats. In a study group, I had opined that nobody can take this country down other than the politicians themselves because they are at loggerheads with each other. So much so that they are not willing to listen to each other's point of view. And that's at the root of all the crisis that you are seeing. Because you heard Lawrence Tribe. I mean, I for a moment felt that he was a Democratic Party spokesperson. This is where the clash comes in, when the academia becomes the champion of an ideology. And that's the clash that is happening. It's not about Harvard alone. It's from all Ivy Leaguers. And since Dr. Gupta here is a Harvard alum, let me share with you all here that when I was an RBI officer in Bangalore, 1983 October, we had the privilege of hosting a Harvard student, MBA, PhD, and a consultant. He said something very poignant which stuck with me, that Indians do not need to go to Ivy League colleges in Oxford to study management. It's there in our own texts. We must study Mahabharata, Ramayana, Gita, and various literature of ours, because all the life management and everything is right out there. But we have to study, not read. So that was a very poignant thing. And after that, I began to read, study. And lo and behold, I found in chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, the entire life success formula is already enunciated there, which most of the management consultants follow. So the issue here is very simple. I believe that every disaster offers an opportunity. This is a disaster that offers India an opportunity to go back and look at the problems which beset our brain drain that happens when people have to go to overseas to study, paying $96,000 per annum for an undergrad study, plus incidental expenses. Yes, US and America and Harvard gain a lot of money. However, it's a drain on somebody else. That is the issue that needs to be determined. And I personally believe Lawrence said very correctly, truth. Let's confront the truth, because that's the ugly part none of us are willing to face and address.
I think you've made some very, very interesting points. And, I'd like to have the views of Ambassador Sajjanhar as well on one of those. But before that, let me take the opening comments from my other two guests as well. And Dr. Karun Gupta, Vibhuti Jha spoke about how extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. Whatever you may say, many people are saying that this is an opportunity for a country like India in the education space, in the higher education space specifically. I want to ask you, what does it immediately mean, firstly, for the students who were looking to travel to the United States of America, either, for the September session or perhaps next year? What happens to them? Because, I mean, of course, it's going to take a lot of time for things to suddenly change here as far as higher education setup is concerned. It's not that tomorrow onwards people will only start looking at universities within the country. There are many who aspire to study in the US for various reasons. What happens to them?
Thank you, Heena. Thank you very much for having me here. And I'm very privileged to hear both Ashok ji and Jhaji's comments. But this question is very relevant to me because I am very concerned with what's going to happen to students right now. And that's the question which everyone has on their mind. Keep in mind that all the policies that we're hearing about, none of these are new policies. Students have been asked for their social media handles from a very long time. In fact, all types of visitor visas, etc., they all ask for social media information. And the difference is that now they're going to be vetted more. So the message is loud and clear. If students are not going to agree with US policies, if they're not going to agree with what the current administration wants politically, if they're going to be students who want to participate in protests, if they want to support violent gangs, they're not welcome in the United States. That message is loud and clear. The current pause that has happened, where the administration has asked the consulate general and embassies to stop giving visa appointments till they don't get the system in place, is a temporary measure, and things will be back to normal. We've been seeing that happening. Students who've been applying for their visas over the last couple of months have got their visas with no problems. Any student who's made any kind of demonstration that they're going to the US, they're going to participate in some kind of protest, they're going to create some problem in the country, those students are facing a problem. And when someone objects to that, I just remind them of a very simple thing. We live in India today. If a foreigner comes here, and if a foreigner is going to be against the government, if that foreigner is going to go on campuses and create protests, he's going to burn the Indian flag, for example, we're not going to tolerate that either. Yes. We're going to ask that person to leave our country. The US is doing the same thing. So while I agree that it may sound a little harsh, and it does sound that, okay, things are going out of hand, let's look at the larger picture here. The US is still welcoming Indian students, international students. They're getting admission in the top universities. As of now, they're still getting visas. Nothing is broken yet. So we've got to still look at the big picture. We've got to stay positive. We've got to tell students that, hey, listen, give it a couple of weeks. The appointments will open up. You're going to be back on track. The Harvard issue, what we were speaking about, at the end, we do have a temporary restraining order.
Okay.
Harvard is still managing to take on new students.
People should not worry too much. That's the message coming in. It's just that the scrutiny is going to be much more. And like you correctly said, from 2019, I think United States of America started asking people applying for visa to submit their social media details as well. Interesting. Catherine, I want to ask you, given the fact that now people's social media past is going to determine their future in the United States of America, whether they'll be getting a visa or not, so should they start deleting their old posts? I mean, do you think that's the way forward, or what should they do?
Well, first of all, thank you, Heena, and thanks to the other panelists. I think Dr. Gupta got a lot of things right about this. If we're not Harvard aside, which is a different issue, and the administration really has it in for Harvard for obviously, and is using every leverage it can. The pause that's being done here is, from what I read, in response partly to visa officers themselves who found the previous guidance they were given earlier this year a little vague as to when they should use that vetting of social media, which, as you and Dr. Gupta have noted, has been required since 2019. And I would still encourage students to apply. I did it very actively during the first Trump administration when I was Consul General. There are a lot of benefits to a U.S. education, and, students can pursue clubs and interests, outside their major. They can get a great education. I just hope the administration, in its reviews of all this, does keep in mind, as you've all pointed out, the benefits of international students for the United States and for communities. It's not just Harvard. If you look at the top recipients of student visas, it's places like Purdue or Arizona State or, Washington University. It's all over the country. It does add about 3.8 lakh jobs, in the United States, as well as, adds to the economy. So it's worth remembering. And U.S. students benefit from foreign students as well, because many U.S. students are not studying overseas. So they learn about foreign countries and cultures through their classmates when they come. So for all that, I hope things are up and running again soon. I know this is the busiest time for visa issuance for students. It's about 70% of visas for students get approved between May and September.
Well, that's an important time period that we're talking about. If 70% of visas get approved between May and September, and something like this has come in the month of May itself, so this is leading to a lot of anxiety among international students who were looking forward to, in fact, go to the United States of America this year itself, or perhaps January next year. But interesting views we got today. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. We'll, of course, be watching this particular news very, very closely ahead as well. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sajjanha, Dr. Karan Gupta, Vibhuti Jha and Catherine. Thank you for joining us here on NewsHour Agenda.